Hey everyone, thanks for checking out part 1 of my Xbox One retrospective. Today I'm going through the launch year, 2013. There weren't a whole bunch of games released that year, definitely not a lot of exclusive games because the system did only launch in late November. But there is enough to talk about, so we're going to go through those games. If you haven't seen any of my retrospectives before, I like to go through my own collection and go through the library of games year by year and see what games I missed out on that year that I probably want to check out. Let's get going with the Xbox One. I have it here. This is, I believe, the Day 1 edition. And I don't think pre-order sold out, so you could probably go in the first week and grab one of these. The Xbox One was, of course, the big follow-up to the 360, and things have changed quite a bit from that generation, where Microsoft was on top for almost all of that generation. Things really took a hard turn with Microsoft's announced plans for the Xbox One, and it really upset a lot of gamers, you know. They just announced a whole lot of things. They announced that it always had to be online, that you always had to have your Kinect available, and there were privacy concerns with that. There were a lot of issues with people not wanting to buy physical copies that were pretty much useless at that point because they were just transferred to digital copies. People that didn't have good internet were upset. Collectors like myself were annoyed, and Microsoft slowly walked back a lot of those changes until it was just a regular console again, but they really took the heat and really suffered because of it. This thing did launch with the Kinect 2.0. That was something Microsoft thought would be a big deal at the time. It was quite a bit different from the original Kinect. Aside from the improved tech, it didn't pivot up and down automatically anymore. And the bigger change, in my opinion, for the worse was that it used a proprietary connector, so you could no longer hook it up to your PC. And I know a lot of what kept the Kinect kind of strong in the previous generation was that tinkerers would use it to make custom-built applications. I know some agencies that built experiences with it well outside of gaming, and so I'm surprised that they changed that up at this point. So it was a better Kinect, but it couldn't really be used outside of the Xbox One without modifying it. It's also the reason the Xbox One launch was more expensive than the PS4. Because it came bundled in, the price was a fair amount higher than Sony, who released their camera separately. So let's get right into it. The Xbox One launched on November 22nd, 2013 at the price tag of $499 US. There were 4 exclusive launch games, so that's better than Sony's 2. And on this console, the launch games were available in Day 1 editions and standard editions. I think the only difference was kind of the box art and maybe some DLC included, depending on the game. Let's get going with my favorite launch game and a game that I think is still worth playing to this day. That is Dead Rising 3 by Capcom. It's a darker, more serious take on the series that adds a ton of new elements. Despite that being the #1 complaint by fans of the previous games, I ended up loving it and highly recommend it. The game leaves the mall setting for a more open city environment. The city is made up of several districts connected by highways which are opened up over the course of the game. Dead Rising 3 takes place 10 years after Dead Rising 2 and stars a new protagonist, Nick, who's trying to escape a new zombie outbreak in Los Perdidos. The story does have a really interesting tie-in to Dead Rising 2. The game features the traditional elements of the series, the weapon crafting returns, and new vehicle crafting is added, which lets the player create a number of insane vehicle combos to take out tons of zombies. The optional psychopath thug bosses also return, and finally the time limits that made the previous game so troublesome are back, but they are extremely generous. On a standard playthrough, you'll likely never have to worry about the time limits like you did in 1 or 2. But for hardcore fans, the game does include a nightmare mode that makes the time limit and checkpoints more like the previous games. The game also features 2-player co-op throughout all of the main games, so you can play through it with a friend or just drop into other players' games. There were 4 DLC packs released which expanded on the story, and 1 super fun DLC which is a 4-player co-op beat-em-up game where you play as different Capcom characters. The next exclusive game was one I picked up at the time, but I didn't really have a need to hang on to it. That is Forza Motorsport 5. The first Forza game on the Xbox One was a decent showpiece for the new console. The game was a great-looking racing title with gameplay that the series is known for. It launched with 200 cars and 17 race circuits, which was less than the previous game, so a lot of people gave it flack for that. 80 new cars were added post-launch through DLC, and new courses were made available as free downloads to make up for that. Next up, the kind of visual showpiece for the system, Ryse Son of Rome. This was developed by the creators of Far Cry and Crysis. The game was originally conceived as an Xbox game for the 360, but was changed to be a launch title for the Xbox One that uses a standard controller. It's a third-person action game set in Rome where the player controls a general seeking revenge for his family's murder. The game is an amazing-looking game, but combat and gameplay are fairly repetitive. Ryse also featured an online multiplayer mode and a Seasons Pass that added new items and modes. The last physical exclusive was Zoo Tycoon. This is a zoo building simulation title. It featured over 100 animals and had several modes including story mode, free building mode, and the ability to free roam your zoo in first person. The game also features a 4-player mode where you could upload your zoo and have 4 players work on it together. Because I'm only covering 2013 in this video, I'm also going to go through the exclusive digital titles which came out. I find that easier to do for Xbox, but for a lot of systems I do that separately, so let's get right into those, starting with Crimson Dragon, an on-rails shooter by the creator of Panzer Dragoon that uses the Kinect but can also be played with a standard controller as well. The game was an interesting attempt to update the Panzer Dragoon formula, but having the firing reticule move separately from the Dragon completely changed up the gameplay in a way that I think a lot of people didn't like. The game features 6 different dragons which could be leveled up and have over 100 skills added. The game was highly criticized for its use of microtransactions. That's been a problem before and will keep being a problem with gaming in this generation, but yeah, this was the first, I think, download title to really hit it this gen. That was available at launch, and 2 weeks later we got Peggle II, which is a follow-up to PopCap's popular puzzle game that was a timed exclusive on the Xbox platforms. The game features the standard mode, a trial mode, and a multiplayer mode. Like the previous game, the gameplay involves shooting a ball from the top of the screen with the goal of hitting and clearing all the orange blocks and pegs from the screen using the limited number of shots provided per each stage. The game includes 4 new masters too, each with unique gameplay mechanics. After that, Max Curse of the Brotherhood. This is a follow-up to the WiiWare title Max and the Magic Marker. It sees the return of Max in a new 2.5D puzzle platformer with 20 levels. The game sees the return of the Magic Marker, which Max can use to create new elements in the game to help progress through the stages. The marker's power increases as the player progresses through the game. And finally, just before Christmas, Halo Spartan Assault, a top-down shooter in which the player controls humans fighting against the Covenant forces in 25 stages. The game features 2-player co-op in which the players go through each stage blasting enemies and completing objectives, with traditional Halo weapons. The story takes place between Halos 3 and 4 and leads into the Spartan Ops missions of Halo 4. It also features some unlocks including XP and emblems for Halo 4 players. So that's it for Microsoft exclusives for 2013. Microsoft doesn't put out a whole lot of exclusives this generation, but 4 for only 1 month is not that bad. So stay tuned for 2014, which will be coming up soon. Check out my other Xbox retrospectives. And if you haven't, please subscribe to my channel because it really helps me as I put these things out. I have a bunch of retrospectives already done, so check those out. I have a bunch more coming up, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks.